We're in our lectionary series, and we're going to be in Genesis, Genesis 24 in just a moment, Genesis 24. And I didn't line this up. This is a 3-year cycle of scriptures, and it fell on this Sunday. Weddings are so much fun. We're going to see a wedding in this chapter of Genesis 24, but weddings are so much fun. There's nerves, there's excitement, there's expectations, aspirations. For dads that try not to cry, there's Valium. No, I won't take any Valium. Chloe has asked me to perform the ceremony next week for she and Grayson, and I'm honored to do it, and a little bit knees knocking, I guess, wondering how it's all going to go. It'll be fine. But people can be nervous. I don't know if you heard about the bride that was so nervous. The day of the wedding had come. She was so nervous. And she was in the back, and she said, "Mom, I just don't know if I can go through with it. I'm so scared." And she said, "Honey, here's what you do. As you walk in, just focus on the aisle that's right there in front of you. Just that church aisle. You're going to be walking down that center aisle. And the second thing, look at the altars at the front. That's your next piece you focus on. The altar, where you're going to commit your life to God and to your husband. And then think about that hymn that you requested that your singer sing, that beautiful hymn of wedded bliss." She's like, "Okay, Mom, thanks." So she's coming down the aisle, and people begin to laugh around her. They're laughing hard. They can't figure out why until she gets closer, and this young bride saying, "I'll alter him, I'll alter him, I'll alter him, I'll alter him." Yeah. There you go. Well, that's what marriage is all about, right? Altering your spouse. Weddings can be fun. There's lots of fun things that happen at weddings. Lots of catastrophes that happen at weddings, but they're a lot of fun. So Isaac and Rebekah, who we're talking about today, just to kind of set this up a little bit, remember God came to Abraham and said, "I'm going to make you into a great nation." And he was 86 years old, didn't have any kids. Hagar comes into his life through Sarah. They have a child, Ishmael. They run him off because he's teasing little Isaac, who's born later, 14 years later. So when Abraham is 100, Sarah is 90, they have little Isaac. He grows up. God's going to bless Isaac. Isaac is now 40 years old and does not have a wife. 40-year-old Isaac. And now Abraham, after his wife dies, he says to his servant, "You've got to find a bride for my son." Okay, so think about that. That's kind of the context of where you are. And so I want to give you some free marital advice. Okay, this is free. This won't cost you anything. If you want to give extra to the offering, that's fine. For this advice I'm going to give to you. But I'm going to give you some biblical points that are free, okay? And hopefully this will stick in your mind. So this is what Genesis says. "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh." So once you get married, stay married. Don't go back home. Don't go back to mom crying and weeping and, "Mom, I need your help." Moms, if you've got a daughter that's married and she calls you and she's all mad at her husband, tell her, pray it out and hang up. Don't listen to her grievance. Don't sympathize with her and take her side against her husband, because you're dividing what God has put together. Now, you can listen and pray. You can listen and give comfort, but don't side with her over that stinking husband she's got. That'll just hurt things, okay? That's advice number one. Number two, Malachi talking, I want the very bottom there. "Has not the Lord made them one? In flesh and spirit they are his." And why one? Because he was seeking godly offspring. So guard yourself and your spirit, and do not break faith with the wife of your youth. Husbands, that means don't be making eyes at somebody that's not your wife. Don't break faith with the wife of your youth. And women, don't go flirting with other men. This is very simple advice. This is free marital counseling, okay? Broad brush stroke, here we go. Women have affairs all the time without ever leaving their husband. They have affairs with this guy because he makes her feel a certain way. They have affairs with this guy because he makes her feel a certain way. They're not having any union with any guy, but they're having emotional affairs all the time. Don't break faith with your marriage partner. This is good for all of us. Now, there are two kinds of people in this room: married and unmarried. Right? Married and unmarried. If you're married, listen close. If you're unmarried, listen really close. Because if you're getting ready to get into marriage, this will help you greatly. That's number two. Number three, Jesus said, "Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." This grieves my heart when I hear people say, oh yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine, they're having marital difficulty and I told them just to split up. And I'm like, what? You just told your friend to leave? Did you tell him to pray? No. Did you tell him to read the Bible? No. Tell him to go to church? No. Just told him to split up. This is breaking this command that Jesus gives. Let no one separate what God has joined together. Let no man put asunder, a separation. Be careful what your words, how you're using your words. Encourage people in their marital vows. Don't discourage them. And then lastly, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. Love your wives. Love your wives. Isn't that interesting? The Bible has to command men to love their wives. Doesn't have to command women. They're supposed to obey their husbands. Now, it's the old King James, and I really like that women are to obey their husbands. I just love that. But the first part is, husbands, love your wives. And if you love your wives, there's more reverence from your wife in the home. That's free marital counsel. Okay, Isaac and Rebekah. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 24, so open your Bibles there. Look at verses 1 through 5 with me. Abraham was now old and well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. He said to the chief servant of his household, the one in charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. This is just a way they made contracts. Verse 3, I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac. The servant asked him, what if the woman is unwilling to come back with me to this land? Shall I then take your son back to the country you came from? Okay, so that's the question. That's verses 1 through 5. Now, Abraham is 140 years old. His son is 40. He's securing a wife for his son. Ravi Zacharias, who just passed away, I love to listen to him. He is such an intellectual mind. He's great to listen to. Look him up online. He is great to listen to. He's got an Indian accent. And so when you read his books, if you imagine him speaking aloud in the books, it's hard to understand what you're reading. So try not to imagine what he's saying in it. But anyway, that's just a bad joke. Chances are, he says, if you marry somebody in violation of your parents' will, you are playing a dangerous game with God. I say to young people, be immensely careful when you make the pledge of your life to somebody if your parents are not in sympathy with it. Particularly so if your parents are men and women who love God. If you are thinking on getting married, or maybe this is from your past even, and you went against mom's wishes, dad's wishes, and they were praying people, it probably was kind of tough for a while. God gives us authorities in our life to speak truth and righteousness into our lives. So be very careful. Listen to godly counsel around you. It's good for us. Okay, verses 6 through 9. Let's look at those. Abraham says, make sure that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, and who spoke to me and promised me on oath, saying, to your offspring I will give this land. Listen to this. He will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son from there. If the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of his master and swore an oath to him concerning this matter. This is so interesting. The angel of God is going before this servant, Eliezer, to go and look for a wife for Isaac. He's promised an angel's going with him. But then, what if the woman's not willing to come? And this is a beautiful example of the sovereignty of God and the free will of man. God's will is being worked out, but he allows us to participate with him. We're not robots or automatons. We must participate with the will of God. And we're going to see what Rebekah does here in just a second. So they go from Hebron up to Nahor. It's 450 miles. Isaac stays back at home on the ranch with dad. Eliezer, the priest, goes 450 miles, but he takes along with him a lot of good stuff to find this bride. So verses 10 and 11, look at this. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and left, taking with him all kinds of good things from his master. He set out for Aram Naharaim and made his way to the town of Nahor. He had the camels kneel down near the well outside the town. It was toward evening, the time the women go out to draw water. Very smart. He's looking for what? A bride. He goes to the place where the women, the young women of the town, are coming out to get water. They come in the morning and they come at evening, the cool of the day. This is a smart servant. He's Abraham's servant. He's not an idiot. He's very wise. He goes to the place where the women are. And as he goes, he does something very, very interesting. Look at verses 12 through 14. Then he prayed, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, give me success today and show kindness to my master Abraham. See, I'm standing beside this spring, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. May it be that when I say to a girl, please let down your jar that I may have a drink, and she says, drink, and I'll water your camels too, let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. He's putting out a fleece, isn't he? He's saying, God, I don't know for sure, but I'm just saying, Lord, here's something. I'll know that you're answering my prayer. And so, Lord, I'm going to ask somebody, and if she brings the jar down from her shoulder and gives me a drink and then offers to water my 10 camels, that'll be the sign, God. I mean, that's a pretty specific prayer, isn't it? I think that teaches us we need to pray with specificity. We need to pray. Don't pray large and in charge. God bless all the missionaries and bless all the people and bless, blah, 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 blah. How about put a name with it? Put a face with it. Pray with specificity when you're praying to the Lord. And Eliezer does this. He prays. I mean, it's very specific. Look at verses 15 and 16. Before he had finished praying, did you catch that? Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. The girl was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had ever lain with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up again. This is the providence of God. 450 miles, Eliezer comes with camels, 10 camels. The timing of this, they get to the spring at just the right time. And Eliezer prays, and God brings out all these women from the town, these young maidens, and they're all getting their water. Lo and behold, as Eliezer's praying, Rebekah comes over. Right then, while he's praying, this is the providence of God. And something here very interesting, the Hebrew word is tob. This is the word that the Bible uses for beautiful or good. It's something that's almost out of this world. It's good. And the Bible describes Rebekah as being very tob. When I was a kid, we used to say, that girl's not very good looking. That girl looks like she fell out of an ugly tree and hit every limb on the way down. And we would say things like that. But not so with Rebekah. She is beautiful. She is gorgeous. She is drop dead. Look at her. That's what the Bible says. It's not just beautiful. The adverb, very tob. This is a good-looking girl that God has preserved for Isaac. So guys, you're not married, don't go to fretting and think, oh, there's nobody good out there. There's nobody good out there. There's nobody left. Not true. Same for you, women, thinking there's no good guy out there. They're all just gone by the wayside. They're all gone running after all kinds of stuff they shouldn't be running after. No, God preserves guys. God preserves women. And it talks about her that she's held on to her virginity. It must be important. She held on to her virginity. And there's one word in the Hebrew, but it can mean two things. It can mean this young maiden. It can mean a virgin or it can mean a maiden. But just to make sure, Moses puts down what both of them mean right here. She was a virgin and she was a maiden. And so this is the girl that God picks out. The girl that God picks out for Isaac. Isn't that interesting? Verses 17 and 18. The servant hurried to meet her and said, please give me a little water from your jar. Drink, my lord, she said, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands and gave him a drink. What a good girl. What an awesome lady. What a servant. Women, listen, I'm not playing here. This is a beautiful trait to serve others. And so don't look at your task of serving your family as a menial trait. This is a beautiful trait that Rebekah shows here. She serves. She serves. That's a beautiful trait. Verse 19, look at this. After she had given him a drink, she said, I'll draw water for your camels too until they have finished drinking. So she goes above and beyond. She goes the second mile. It's not just a drink for the guy, but she's going to water his animals. Verses 20 and 21. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw more water, and drew enough for all his camels. Without saying a word, the man watched her closely to learn whether or not the Lord had made his journey successful. I think he's still puzzled. He's like, I can't believe it's happened. I mean, the first try. I mean, there are guys that ask out hundreds of women until they find the right one. This is the first try. This is Eliezer. I think I had a first try with Shri. Did you say no to me 3 times or 4 when I asked you to marry me? I can't remember. Anyway, I'm kidding. She begged me to marry her. She begged me to marry. No, I'm kidding. Rebekah is the great niece of Abraham. You go, oh, that's kind of weird. What is that? Is that Mississippi? What is that? I'm just kidding. Rebekah is the great niece of Abraham. She's the great niece of Abraham. Think about it. This is Isaac marrying into family. Okay? So camels can drink up to 25 gallons of water. There are 10 camels. That's about 2,000 pounds of water. 8 pounds to a gallon. And she draws 2,000 pounds of water up out of this well and brings it over and waters all these camels. Not only is she a servant, she is a hard worker. That's a great thing. Men or women, that's a great trait to have. Be a hard worker. Have a good ethic. Don't put in as little time as you can. Go above and beyond. Don't be lazy. Don't be lethargic in your work for God. Do it for Him. You're not working for men anyway. You're working for the Lord, Colossians 3:23 says. Do everything for the Lord. Do your job. Work hard. Rebekah shows us that. Abraham's servant discusses dowry with Bethuel, and that's Abe's uncle, and they agree to let her go. Just like that. They see the bracelets on her arm. They see that she's got a ring in her nose, a piece of gold in her nose. It was a sign of wealth. And she puts it in, and she has the bracelets on her arm. They come home, and they see the 10 camels. They're like, oh, black gold, Texas tea. They're thinking, we've struck it rich. I mean, this is a lot of wealth coming into this little town. They see that, and they agree to the terms of the dowry, and they let her go. Verse 61, skipping clear over to the end of the chapter here, turn to 61. That whole part in there is all the talking back and forth. They ask Rebekah, do you want to go? She said, yep, I'll go. So verse 61, then Rebekah and her maids got ready and mounted their camels and went back with the man. So the servant took Rebekah and left. She has a submissive heart. She must be a godly woman. This is the God of Abraham's ancestors as well. They knew of God. They called on the Lord, Genesis says. They called on the Lord. And so she goes. She has a submissive heart. That's a beautiful thing to have as well. Verses 62 and 63, they've gone 450 miles. Now Isaac had come from Beer Lahai Roi, for he was living in the Negev. He went out to the field one evening to meditate, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching. He's just out meditating on the Lord. He's thinking about God, and he's heard his dad talk about, hey, son, God has promised us many offspring. You will have a wife. You will have kids. Guaranteed. Count on it. Dad, I'm 40 years old. I'm like a 40-year-old virgin. Dad, who wants me? Son, God's got this. So he's waiting, he's hoping, and he's trusting. That's important to do. If you're single, wait. Hope and trust. Don't get ahead of God. Don't rush ahead. Don't try to take it in your own hands. Wait on God. If you're married, you need to wait, hope, and trust. Don't think, I'll alter him. I'll alter him. Give that to the Lord. Wait on the Lord to make any changes that need to be made in your husband or your wife. And then 64 and 65, this is such a beautiful picture of modesty. Rebekah also looked up and saw Isaac. She got down from her camel and asked the servant, who is that man in the field coming to meet us? He is my master, the servant answered. So she took her veil and covered herself. Modesty, that's lost in our day. We need to get back to modesty. I mean, girls, be careful what you wear. And then girls will say, well, man, you need to have custody of your eyes. Yes, they do. But it takes two to tango. Women, cover yourself. Men, watch where your eyes go. Watch where your eyes go. There's a book, Every Man's Battle, Steve Arterburn. He talks about bouncing the eyes. You can't help but see somebody that's beautiful. Taube, she's very taube. But you bounce the eyes. You bounce the eyes. Don't focus on something you're not supposed to have. So she's modest. She covers herself. Beautiful. Also has to do with her virginity. She covers herself. Virginity is God's gift to every person that's born. Then 66 and 67, close this off here. Then the servant told Isaac all he had done. Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. This must be love at first sight. How in the world? I mean, would you trust your parents to arrange your marriage? I'm seeing a lot of head shaking this way. You're 40 years old, you have a wife. Mom, Dad, I'm ready. Go get her. I trust you. Just get whoever you want. I trust you. Would you do that? When you were a teenager, would you have trusted your parents to pick out your spouse? No? We've asked our kids that, and we get different responses to how that goes. One was fun, was Chloe, and she said, yeah, I would trust that. I said, oh, really? Why is that? She said, well, Dad, you'd make sure that she's a really strong Christian, and Mom would make sure that he had a good personality and was really good looking. And I said, there you go. So we picked out Grayson, and it's worked out really well so far, so it's been good. God provided in God's time. God provided in God's time. He may have wanted a wife at 22. He may have wanted a wife at 32. He definitely wanted a wife at 40. And God provided in God's time. Wait on God. This isn't just with marriage. This is all things. Let God work in your life. Be patient with Him as He works. 4 lessons quickly to learn from Isaac and Rebekah's story. Number 1, this is in the notes if you're taking notes online. Parents, seek God's will for your kids. Abraham took that on himself. Seek God's will for your kids. Talk to your kids. Tell your kids what God's burdening your heart with. What is God burdening your heart with? Talk to your kids about that, whether they're little or grown. Seek to teach them God's will. Number 2, employees, if you're an employee, listen up. Seek God for your boss. Seek God's will for your boss. Eliezer did that. He prayed, God, give me success for my boss. Isn't that interesting? Instead of, God, would you stick it to my boss? No. Eliezer prays for his boss. He prays for success for his boss. Employees, seek God for your boss. Number 3, do not be unequally yoked. Abraham said, don't go to the Canaanites. Don't go to somebody who doesn't know God, Elohim, Yahweh. Go to my hometown where they know the God that I know. Don't be unequally yoked. What fellowship can lightness and dark have with one another? That's what Paul says. Don't marry an unbeliever. Marry somebody who loves Jesus. I think I told you I was at a restaurant and this woman came to me and she was crying or something, the waitress, and I said, what's up? She goes, I'm single again. Went through this whole thing and she went away. She came back and I said, it wasn't busy. I said, can I give you some advice I give to my daughter? She said, sure. I said, if you can find a man who loves Jesus more than he loves you, you'll have a great husband. She went, what? So I'm just telling you, if you can find a guy who loves Jesus, now I don't even know if she loved Jesus, but I told her, if you can find a guy who loves Jesus more than he loves you, you'll have a great husband. So don't be unequally yoked. And number 4, marriage is a gift from God. It is a gift from God. It's not a curse from God. It's not, oh man, 50 years, this has been a sentence. No, it's a gift. Marriage is a gift from God. Don't complain about God's gift to you. Have you heard that saying, don't look a gift horse in the mouth? You know what that means? I mean, you can tell the age of a horse by looking at their teeth. You don't get a gift and go, let's see here. Don't look a gift horse in the God's gift to you is your spouse. Thank God for your spouse. Praise God for your spouse. Husbands, here it is again. Love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word. We're to serve our spouse, our significant other. We're to serve them. I don't know if you're like Sheree and I. Sometimes we have fights sanctified disagreements. We're going to be married 30 years this week, I think. Shree was 5 years old when we got married, and so it was weird. Anyway, so we had a fight this last week. We had this fight. I mean, you think, my preacher fights with his wife? Well, yeah, I did. And I won. No, I'm kidding. No. And so we were on a walk, and she was upset at me for something I'd said or done. It's just lots of things I've done and said that are not good. I need to work on that, a lot of those things. And so we were walking, and she's kind of quiet. We're both listening to scripture on our earbuds, and I'm thinking, I know what I can do. We passed these daisies on this sidewalk. It was the area of construction. There's nobody living there. There were not anybody. They were planted by God. I didn't steal them. And so I'm thinking, I know, I'll solve this. I'll reach down, I'll grab a couple daisies right there and just bring them right over to her. While we're walking, this would be so romantic. And so I reach down and I grab two quite quickly, and they pull off, and I grab two things of fescue grass, and I just put them right over. She's like, nice try. I left the flowers on the ground. I was trying to hold fescue up for her to grab, and like these beautiful flowers. We both kind of laughed. And then she said, you know what God's trying to tell you? I said, no, what? She said, God's telling you need to try harder. It's like, Thanks a lot. She speaks to God for me a lot. It's amazing how many things God says to me through my wife. You need to have fun in marriage. Marriage is a gift from God. Enjoy the gift that God has given to you. And here's a beautiful picture. Last thing before we go. I was asked to go and speak for a couples retreat a few years ago. And I was there, and we were in a motel in a big area where people could kind of be in the same room together, this big area. And I'd prepared all these lessons to give, and I thought, I know what we'll do. The last thing we'll do is we'll ask the men to get out a bowl. I had bowls prepared and some water and towels. We'll have the husbands get down on their knees and wash their wives' feet. And so we came to that point in that service. It was the close of our service. And we had the water ready and the towels, and the guys were very willing. I mean, it was really neat. It was spectacular. And these men got down and they began to wash their feet. And I remember looking over, and there was one guy who was just weeping. Then I looked at his wife, and guess what she was doing? She was weeping as well. They had kind of confided in me some really big problems they were having in their marriage. But as he washed her feet, something spiritual happened there at that conference. God moved in on that marriage and began to bring healing to them. So I don't know where you are in your marital relationship, but maybe it's getting out the bowl and the towel. Maybe that's just figuratively, and serving the one that you love, because marriage is a gift. God gave Rebekah to Isaac, and God has given you your spouse. So treat them as a gift, and you will be blessed. Let's stand together for a word of prayer.